Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Waj, and in this video we'll be doing a direct graphical comparison between the Alienware Alpha, which is a compact gaming PC from Alienware and Dell, versus the PlayStation 4, which is probably one of the most popular next generation consoles out there. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at several different games on both platforms to see which one is best and to see which one is the better gaming machine. Now, before we get into the actual graphical differences between these two, we're going to take a look at the overall properties that the Alienware Alpha and the PS4 have. Starting with the physical differences, you can see that the Alienware Alpha is a very compact gaming machine, being overall smaller than the PS4, measuring under 20 centimeters in terms of its depth and width, versus the PS4 measures about 27.5 centimeters in terms of its depth and about 30.5 centimeters in terms of its length. Now, one thing you do have to keep in mind is that the Alienware Alpha does have an external power brick that you have to deal with, versus the PS4 has that power supply built in. Now, in terms of the internal specifications, both the PlayStation and the Alienware Alpha are rocking some pretty powerful internal specs. The PS4 specifically is running an AMD 8-core CPU that's based on the Jaguar platform, and that's clocked at about 1.6 gigahertz. It also has 8 gigabytes of RAM, which is shared both for the CPU and the GPU. Now, the Alienware Alpha is configurable to different CPU specs, so you can get a Core i5, Core i7, Core i3. We have the baseline configuration of the Core i3 4130T, which is a dual-core processor that has hyper-threading, so it acts like a quad-core, but it is clocked in about 2.9 gigahertz, and it has 3 megabytes of level 3 cache, which is excellent. And since we have the baseline configuration, we have 4 gigabytes GDDR3. Now, you can upgrade that. If you take a look at inside the Alienware Alpha, there are 2 DIMM slots, so you can upgrade it to like 16 or 32 gigabytes of RAM if you need that much. Now, in terms of the graphics specifications, the PlayStation 4 is using a variant of the 7870 GPU from AMD. It has about 18 computational units, which has a total core number of about 1152, and it basically has the ability to compute up to 1.84 teraflops of information. Now, the Alienware Alpha is actually using an NVIDIA-based graphics card. It's a variant of the GTX 860M, which is something you would find in a mid to higher end gaming laptop. It has 2 gigabytes of GDDR5, which should be enough to power most of your games at full 1080p resolutions. Now, graphically, the big difference between the Alienware Alpha and what the PS4 can do is that the Alienware Alpha can deliver your games and render them at full 1080p without any upscaling, versus the PlayStation and most of your modern next generation consoles are rendering the games generally below 1080p, such as 1600 by 900, but there are certain games that PlayStation 4 can render at full 1080p as well. So let's get into the actual graphical comparisons and see which one looks the best. The first game that we're going to take a look at is Far Cry 4. Now, we're going to set the Alpha to basically render everything at 1080p with high details enabled. So let's go ahead and take a look at both of them and see how they perform. Now, the next game that we're going to take a look at is Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, which is available for both platforms, which is excellent. And again, we have the same high settings on the Alienware Alpha. So let's go ahead and see how this game looks. Now, looking at Battlefield 4, it does look pretty good on the PlayStation 4. You do have to keep in mind that it hovers around 40 frames per second, and it probably renders things at around 900p, versus we can maintain a frame rate around 50 to 60 frames per second on the Alienware Alpha, and keeping things at pretty high details at 1080p. And I do have to say that in terms of shadows and reflection and environmental elements, the Alpha does look better, and the overall detail is certainly better because we are rendering at higher details and higher resolution. And plus, you do get an overall better frame rate, especially if you're a multiplayer and things like that. Now, I'm sure you can get better performance if you upgrade the CPU on the Alienware Alpha to a Core i7 or Core i5, and that way it'll take advantage of that higher horsepower, because this game definitely is CPU and GPU intensive. Now, the final game that we're going to take a look at is The Crew, which is not a first-person shooter, so we have a little bit of a different dynamic over here. And generally speaking, racing games do pretty well on pretty much every gaming platform. They're a little bit less graphically intensive than first-person shooters, but The Crew definitely has some good details that is noticeably clearer on the Alienware Alpha. We have less overall aliasing and better overall motion blur, and environmental elements look a little bit better as well. But there's not really a night and day difference between the PlayStation 4 and the Alpha in terms of this racing game. But on that, guys, that's really it. If you have any specific questions about anything I talked about, make sure to leave those on a comment down below. Make sure to give us a thumbs up if you like this video. That really helps us out tremendously. And also, if you're interested in how the Alienware Alpha compares against the Xbox One, we have that video on our channel. So make sure to visit our channel if you haven't done that. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you later. Take care.